Hello, and welcome to Chapter 8, the second last chapter in InnoBuzz's online marketing course. Today, we're going to be looking at PR and reputation management. So as usual, we're going to have an introduction. We're then going to talk about press release strategies, reputation management, and then finally, word of mouth marketing. So, PR, public relations. It's the harnessing of the press and multiple publics to work for you. Much of PR is done through media releases, which can be televised, held in a private press conference, or a press release. In the digital realm, we are primarily concerned with utilizing press releases. It's by far the most common and also the most simple for us as marketers to use. We're definitely going to talk about some other strategies in this course, but the core of the first bit, it's all about press releases. So, since media outlets don't just intrinsically know what stories to publish, they rely on press releases as well as investigative journalism to get good information. Except the problem with investigative journalism is that, well, you can only really investigate the major stories. For a media organization, it would be a very expensive way to get all of their news like that. And so what they do is they rely on people talking to them to tell them what's good. Now, as good marketers, we want to make sure that our company's story is in front of those people and that we have a good story. So the big trick to that is to have something worth talking about. And this can be an item that's interesting or topical, but it has to be something that people care about. So there's really two different things you need to keep in mind here. The first is that a journalist writes for their audience. And so the most important thing is that whatever you're putting in your press release ultimately be of relevance and interest to some potential journalist, whether it's for Time Magazine or Marketing Monthly. Just make sure that it caters at least in some way. And if you're going for big national press, obviously you're going to want to keep it so it'd be interesting to the average person reading a newspaper or online news website. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that you're also selling to the journalists. They need a story that's, well, it's got to make sense, has to be complete, has to be easy to understand, and you need to make sure that your press release checks all of those off. Now, before you start doing a press release, one thing that you can do, and many companies do choose to, is to do a little bit of market research. Now, if you go back just to the third tick there, the big trick is to have something worth talking about. That item can be interesting or topical. Okay, well, you can market research both of those things, but with interest, well, it's kind of more important. Topical is pretty easy. You just have to pay attention to the news. Now, if you have to do market research to figure out what your target market is interested in, and you're one of the lead marketing guys in your organization and you're doing it for the purpose of this press release, you might want to rethink, I guess, a little bit about your business strategy here. This should be already done. What you should be doing is drawing on market research that has already been completed for the purpose of your press release. You just want to use it in it. One of the joys of the internet is it's made press releases extraordinarily simple and really efficient. One of the downsides of the internet is because of that efficiency, everyone's doing it. Not everyone. A lot of companies are doing it. Many established players and many not established players, which isn't necessarily great. Nonetheless, when it comes to the internet, there are two kinds of submissions you can do. There are free press releases, and then there are paid press releases. Now, as marketers, the vast majority of the time, as you know, we're after big wins. And you want to take a guess which sites the New York Times and other big publishers communicate with? Yeah, it's the paid ones. The truth of the matter is that free is great, but I think it's one of those instances where you're going to be, let's just say you better have a really good story if you're expecting any kind of uptake from a free press release. And you know what the truth of the matter is? You know what? Actually, here, I was going to do this a little bit later on, but while we're talking about prices, let me just pull open PR Web, one of the biggest sites, and we're going to look at pricing. There we go. The basic plan But we're interested in the premium amount, the one that goes to premier news outlets like the New York Times, USA Today, and more through the Associated Press. Excellent. Okay, $369 per news release. Now, if you're an entrepreneur and you're just starting up, I understand $369 may seem like one of those things that's on the fence. There may be more effective ways that you could spend your money. For instance, you can email a lot of people for about that much money if you go through a more established company. There are companies that sell out their lists, their permission-based lists, and allow you to attach your message to them like an advertisement. And you're going to pay about that much to get your email out to literally millions of people. But at the same time, for many new startup companies, if you have something newsworthy or noteworthy, then yeah, absolutely, this $370 is going to be well worth it. And if you're a corporation, let's be honest, this is pocket change. This is no money at all. Just get it done. There's really no excuse not to take the chance to get it sent through the New York Times, USA Today, and more of those huge sites. I mean, you really would just be throwing away not just attention, but then potential customers as well. And with the affordability of the online submissions nowadays, go for it. Just make sure to get your money out of it, and I really want to stress this, it has to be newsworthy. It has to be something interesting and or topical. That's the key to the good press release. Let's go back here to our PowerPoint. So we're after the big wins, and as discussed, the premium one, definitely way to go. The $370, I would rather spend that than go for one of the cheaper ones. It just doesn't make sense. Now, you don't have to use a press release. And oftentimes, sorry, that's not correct. You don't have to use a press release service. Oftentimes, it is best to contact directly the news agency that you're looking at. This is true especially for local news. Now, when we're looking at sites like the New York Times, which is going to receive tons and tons and tons of these a day, you're probably better off going through a submission service. Just simply because, well, they've got eyes there for sure, and your news will just go through in a scroller as opposed to getting lost in a heap somewhere. But for local news stations who have fewer people, smaller staff, not as much time to look at those online submission sites, and if you were a Milwaukee startup, and you were doing something noteworthy for the community or had some just a great offering, I would be very surprised if they would not be interested in telling your story, and that in turn get you some traffic, get you some customers. So I wrote down here examples of numerous PR services. There are a whole bunch of free ones that you can use. They're okay. You can give them a shot. They're absolutely free. NPR.org is an established one. That's a new public radio, actually, and that's a fairly major U.S. And is it corporate or I think it's a public. Yeah. Public radio. ThomasNet, Nanotech Now, PR Log. Some of these are not great. I took the time to click through some of them. A lot of them are unfamiliar, like Nanotech Now. A lot of them just seems like blogs that allow submissions. I would be kind of hesitant. Let's just click on a couple just to see what happens. Do Nanotech, Beta News, I remember seeing legit. PR Zoom, business news. Okay. Yeah, I remember looking at this one. This is one of those instances. You just contact Beta News with news, and then they put it in. Like, it's weird. That's not quite the way you would want. Yeah, and PR Leaf makes literally no sense. Okay, this is very different from Business Wire. Let's bring that up over here. A Berkshire Hathaway company. So this company was purchased by Warren Buffett. And if you follow Warren Buffett at all, he's one of the richest men in the entire world, worth billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. And he is well known for making very savvy investments. He typically comes in, buys up an entire smallish company, and because he likes their management, their business structure, the things they do, and their growth rates, and continue forward. So we have this clue in our minds that this business wire is going to be much more of a legitimate service. And that's the key. I mean, we're sending out press releases here, and the whole idea is to get press uptake. And I really have to question how many news sites are reading beta news. Now, I don't know too much about their company, and I don't want to say anything slanderous or anything, but their design does not give much comfort. There didn't seem to be too much going on, and their submission was just a contact form. It's weird. It doesn't really seem to make sense. This is a much better way to go. So PRWeb and BusinessWire are the two that I would certainly recommend to you. So all news, let's just click on it, and we can see submissions, what company's been saying. So Technip receives the top employers 2012 certification. You know, it's nothing complicated, but it's just decent news. That's the key. Introducing chicken and waffles. Tarani. Well, that's interesting. See, notable news. Tarani is the company that Starbucks uses, I believe, or maybe they switched. Either way, Tarani is a major supplier of that syrup that goes into your lattes and whatnot. Chicken and waffles, I would say that would definitely be newsworthy. I am contemplating clicking on that, but I shall not at this point in time. So, again, the advice, stay away from the freebie stuff. It's not quite the same, and stick more towards the business wire, the more legitimate. And the pricing on the site is, you know, fairly similar to PRWeb. Nothing about it is too terribly different. So use whichever one you think would be best for you, or use both. That's another option too, especially for corporations where $370 for a press release, drop in the bucket. So how do you write a great press release? You want to keep that headline brief, clear, and to the point. It's like that chicken and waffles one that we saw. It was ultra compact. When it comes to writing the body, it should be written as you want it to appear in a news story. Remember, you are giving the journalist all the information they are going to have to write the story. Now, as I previously discussed, the body should be seen as an opportunity to sell yourself to the journalist and sell yourself to readers. But you want to ensure that information about your company is included. Make sure that you put some quotes on that page. Make sure you have all of the relevant information, everything a journalist would ask. So those 5 W's, make sure that's all included in there. Put a link to your website and list your contact information. That's all pretty standard stuff. So what does this look like in the end? Let's head over to Business Wire once more. So this is from about 6 days ago. New solutions from Orange Media make it easy for national SMB service providers to sell online marketing. Okay, so to many of us, this will be meaningless, but to some specific people, it will mean something very important, and that's the point. So basically, they've got a little quotable here. They've got a couple quotes. They've got their company information, and they talk about what's going on. There's the background, and there's the hybrid. Okay, so they've addressed all of the relevant stuff to the story. They've included their company information. They've included background. They've got some quotes, and they even have a quotable here, which is a nice feature of Business Wire. Done. Nice, simple, and easy. It doesn't have to be anything complicated, and I beg you, please do not make anything overly complicated. There's really just no point to doing it. It's a story, and that's journalism 101, is keep it simple. So make sure that you do that. Remember, a lot of this will feed directly into a news report. What did we see? We saw no pictures. In content marketing, which will be our next course, or the next chapter in this course, the use of pictures is a tried and true strategy. It will increase your traffic and boost readability by breaking up your text. Absolutely. That is proven. And with press releases, it's not standard to include pictures. If you want to include pictures, you definitely want to make them available in your press kit, and since you've linked to your website, they can grab that information. Pretty handy, right? Make sure that pictures communicate positive images about your firm. I mean, just think through any newspaper. Whenever you see a beautiful picture, it really is a great opportunity for branding. So make sure that you act on that. Now, of course, not everything has to boil down to the online press release. You can also land yourself press interviews where you can end up on television or in local or even national media, which is pretty exciting. The best way to ensure you consistently book these interviews is by hiring a publicist. That's just a fact. That's their job. In North America, they will run you between 5 and 10K per month on average for a good one. And their job is to simply just book you these interviews. You can also reach out to media outlets yourself, and if you don't have the money to spend on a publicist and you do have something worth telling, I would encourage you to do so. Plenty of people who end up on the news or on Oprah or on daytime TV, I don't think all of them have publicists. They just have great stories, and that's the key. When it comes to actually giving the press interview, it's much like going to a job interview or into a very formal board meeting plan. Make sure that you have all the information in advance. That's actually one of the keys to these interviews is, like, if you were to ever sit down and watch an episode of any daytime or nighttime talk show, those questions, they're pre-planned, and so are a lot of those answers. Don't get me wrong, it's a very real conversation that occurs, but beforehand, they've discussed the questions, they've discussed the areas which will be off limits, and you have had time to prep the answers to the questions that will be asked. And that's the key, and that's the whole planning bit. Now, obviously, if you're going in representing your company, you need to have a darn good idea of what's going on in the first place. But by taking the time to call up the person who's going to be interviewing you and just, set aside some ground rules, that is totally acceptable and very, very common. In fact, I would absolutely encourage you to do that. One of the worst things would be to just go in with no planning and then be taken by surprise on every question because you've not set up any boundaries or any ground rules. That would just not be good. It would kind of defeat the purpose of giving the press interview, because if it's not good enough to, well, if you're live, there's nothing you can do, right? But if it's recorded and you give a bad interview, then best case, it doesn't get shown. Worst case, it impacts your business in a pretty serious negative fashion. So make sure you do plan. Okay, let's talk about reputation management. Reputation management is the process of overseeing and controlling how your firm is viewed and how people talk about your firm. It involves a whole bunch of different things like crisis aversion, strategic setups, fan manipulation, and one-on-one two-way communication. There's all different kinds of things you can do when it comes to, guarding your reputation. And that is very important. As a marketer, if you are involved in marketing on a daily basis, you will know exactly how important reputation is. But if you're relatively new to the field or just starting off as an entrepreneur, allow me to stress to you, your reputation really is everything. One of the biggest changes we've seen with the web in the last 10 years is people's willingness to talk a lot. And we've seen instances where companies have been unheard of. They're basically small, tiny little companies. They offer phenomenal service, and they absolutely explode because people start talking about them and sharing information about them. And then we've seen the exact opposite happen. We've seen companies crash and burn because people spill the beans about just how terrible they are. Airlines, in particular, have taken incredibly nasty hits in the last 5 years or so, just because historically many of them offer terrible service. But now people can actually talk about it and share and be standing in line when they post a message up to all of our Facebook and Twitter feeds. It makes a big difference. So for all the new marketers out there, reputation is crucial. So definitely follow these steps and guard it. Now here's something really cool with reputation management. It's actually basically the same as generating buzz, if you can believe it or not. I know, it sounds a little bit crazy. How do you drill up excitement while managing your reputation? Well, here's the thing with marketing. Marketing is all about communication. And so the question I ask you, since you're always communicating, is it really that different? Ideally, in the end, your communications would all have similar goals, similar targets. So your goal of generating buzz and your goal of guarding your reputation and building upon it is actually very similar. So when it comes to generating buzz and then to building your reputation, there are many strategies. The best one, my personal favorite, and one greatly advocated by Seth Godin, is to be remarkable. Now, Seth Godin, I believe I've talked with him previously in this course. He's one of America's greatest marketers today. His whole thing, he's even written books all about this. Just be remarkable at what you do. No gimmicks, nothing fancy. You don't even need to drill too much into your cost. Just provide better service than expected. That's it. Or a better product than expected. Apple's a great example of this. I keep on seeing news headings saying that Apple is the most profitable company in the entire world. Fantastic. And you know what? It's interesting. If you were to walk into any computer store nowadays and you were to point out the highest quality machine, regardless of what your opinions of your preference of Windows versus Mac versus Android or any other operating system, I think we can all pretty much agree Macs are built the best. And if you play around with the operating system, you might find that it does some things that Windows doesn't. And in fact, it actually is quite remarkable. So are their iPods. The iPhone is just wonderful. Everything about that company is pretty remarkable. You know, if you're looking at strategies of big players and wondering how you can be more successful, that would definitely be one way. And if you want to build a great reputation, being more remarkable is kind of about as good as it gets. You can chase opinion leaders. Those would be people in your field who tip the scales a little bit. There's all kinds of examples. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book all about this. It's called The Tipping Point, and he lays out several examples. Like, for instance, I think with the shoe brand was Doc Martens, and some undercover culture groups started wearing them, and people saw them and thought they were really great, and the whole brand had this rejuvenation because of this one group of people, the small influential group, which ended up leading the brand into the mainstream again. But opinion leaders doesn't have to be something kind of counterculture that's hard to find. Opinion leaders are everywhere, and the internet makes it extremely simple. One of the most obvious places that everyone seems to forget to look, blog owners. We're going to cover this really in depth in the next chapter of this course, but blog owners kind of have a big following that listens to them very regularly. If you're courting these kinds of people and they're writing about you and talking about you, you're going to be doing very well. You can also do public appearances and have constant interviews, sure. Celebrity endorsement, that's great. That generates buzz and manages your reputation. Fantastic. And you know what? Just as a bit of a challenge, I'm not going to give any more away. I bet you can come up with loads more yourself. If you sat down and just thought about it for a few minutes, you're going to get loads. There are tons of ways that you can generate buzz and manage your reputation. One of the ways you can manage your reputation is by generating reviews. Now, if you want reviews, you must realize people will talk about you for one of two reasons. Either they A, like to review things, or B, you were remarkably good or bad. That's pretty much how it is. People don't generally go on a trip and stay at a resort. It was an alright resort. It wasn't the dream ocean 5-star, but it wasn't bad either. I'm not really going to write up a review on that, in all honesty. Most people won't. Not because you weren't really remarkably good or bad. They're not going to spread really word of mouth. You were fine. It was a fine resort, you know? So they'll go home and tell their friends, and yeah, it was fine. Of course, there will also be the people who do like to review things, and they absolutely will. I'm just trying to say that ideally, you will be remarkably good, and people will talk about you, and you will court the attention of people who like to review things. It would be like Robert Ebert is a very, very famous movie critic. It would be like releasing a blockbuster movie and then just being like, yeah, we're not going to let him review our movie. Like, it doesn't make sense. So definitely make sure that you court to both people. Now, when it comes to getting people who review things, just make sure your business is listed on popular review sites. Make sure that you have a Google Maps and local listings so people can see you and talk about you there. Those are the kind of the bare basics of what you need. And then when it comes to part B, please be remarkably good. The remarkably bad way, I don't think that's very often a successful business strategy. I'm sure it's worked. Maybe one company managed to ninja a way of having one offering being really bad so they could ninja in a remarkably good one, but I don't know. I don't think I would want to take that risk. People talk, and if you want to generate reviews, be remarkably good, people will talk about you. But we're going to talk about this a little bit more in word of mouth. Customer defense. A military marketing strategy. Military marketing is a forthcoming subset of marketing. It's like neuromarketing. It's brand new. And a lot of research is still being done on this, and people are still figuring it out. Basically, the idea behind military marketing, as I'm sure you've already figured out, is to apply military strategies to marketing. To give marketers an even worse name, of course. However, one of the things that you can do is allow customers to come to your defense. Incorrectly used, you would tell your fans to chase or hate on something. This would be a bad call. And what do I mean by this? I mean, let's say a news writer writes something terrible about you. So you go on your social media and you tell all of your readers to boycott their website and to post nasty comments up on the article. Well, first of all, that's going to backfire. But it's just not the most intelligent way. Whenever you're appearing to the public, generally, you kind of want to have a good message that you communicate. And using your fans as a weapon like that, that's not really smart. So let's talk about Apple again. Right? Let's organic, natural defense as being better. Okay, so what do I mean by this? Have you ever tried to tell someone who loves Apple products that Windows is better? Now, I use Windows myself. I've also used Mac a bit. But have you ever tried to tell them? They get pretty up in your face and a little bit upset, a little bit angry sometimes even. And they will sit there and engage you forever about why Macintosh is actually better. Are they right in the end? I don't really think that matters. What I think matters is how passionate they are about that. And then you got to think, like, why would a person be that passionate? Well, probably because every experience they've ever had with an Apple product has been fantastic. Probably because they use multiple Apple products and they've maybe given some as gifts, so they actually have a fairly representative sample of products that they could accurately review to you. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's a lot better strategy. So we're looking at an organic defense, not a here, fans, sick kind of strategy, which in the end, it's common sense, I think. It should be anyway. You're accruing those social media fans because you want them to convert and for your company to stay salient, not because they're supposed to be your own private army. That's not great. And what's the trick again to Apple getting that great organic defense? They're remarkable. It's just the thought of the day, I think. Sometimes your company is going to screw up. You know it. I know it. It happens. Your database is going to crash. An employee is going to say something stupid. A product isn't going to ship. Something's going to happen. So when it comes to the internet and dealing with this, one of the most important things you can do, and not enough firms do this still to this day, but it's about responsiveness. There is a fairly famous book on internet marketing called Do It Wrong Quickly. I actually have it on my own bookshelf here. And one of the most important points that it stresses early on is that firms be responsive, because it really doesn't cost anything anymore except the labor of someone, probably a PR social media in all likelihood in today's age, a social media person just responding to a person who's complained. And, well, the truth of the matter is that with features like Twitter search, it's kind of really easy just to stay clued in on your brand and what people are talking about you. And if someone posts something negative, you can be there to respond literally instantly. So I've told you before that I do some consulting, and I also run my own businesses. And I've personally found that the firms that seem to be more responsive, they seem to perform better overall. And that's in both B2B and B2C situations. It's great that companies do engage their customers. It just makes them feel that they care a little bit more. And if you can meet them halfway or provide something, even if it's just a sincere apology, that really helps. And meanwhile, in B2B is all about relationships. Relationships are the most important thing in business to business. And therefore, well, being responsive is kind of key. So, negativity, it's going to happen, like I said. Sometimes you're just going to screw up a little bit, hopefully. Sometimes it'll be a big screw up, though, let's be honest. Generally, the best thing you can do, apologize. If appropriate, incentivize the apology, by which I mean give them something. Generally, you would want to stay away from giving them cash. It's a basic accounting trick. If you give cash, you give 100% of the cash away. If you give product, you give your product or your profit margin away, or your base cost rather. Sorry. Ugh. If you give product, you give your base cost away, or your service. And that's kind of the key here, because it seems like they're getting a lot more than they're actually getting. Just a handy little trick. So someone has said something incredibly negative about your company, and now it is indexed in Google. Oh, that's bad. That's really bad. But you're lucky. It was a blog or a forum, because that's generally where it's going to be. So you can actually email that person directly and address the situation. I think it's worth it. Every now and then, I will find a company, and I'll see something like this. The first search result in Google is about their company, or is their company. The second one, just some website talking about their company, no big deal. And the third one will say, this company is terrible. Oftentimes in nastier language. Now, there's that handy little statistic about 82% of the traffic going to the top 3 in Google. I cannot imagine how devastating it would be to your company to have something like that. So obviously, your primary goal is going to be getting rid of that article. By just dealing with the negativity, dealing with the situation, being there, you may be able to convince the writer to take it down. Maybe not. If not, and let's just say this was a hypothetical, because I'm sure that some of the people listening to this course will be in this exact situation themselves. You can perform kind of reverse SEO, if you will, where you drown out their article by flooding the search engines with better articles. And this can be done quite easily, actually. You can set up with your social media networks, with your connections with your fans, with those opinion leaders that you are now in contact with. You can just get them to be writing about you. You can send them you can send them cash, free product, incentivize them however you will. And in the end, you have downgraded the negative article and in return brought up all these positive ones. And if you don't have a negative article, why aren't you doing exactly that anyway? Just in case one ever did show up, but also because, I mean, come on, if your company shows, or if someone searches your company on Google and they see your company and then just the rest of the page is this company is awesome, that's pretty cool. So definitely a strategy to consider. So with negativity, be responsive, be there. If you need to give product, or in the worst case, cash away, do so if you can afford to do it, if it's within your company's policies, and do what it takes to stop negative word of mouth. Now, one of the things you can do, we've talked about opinion leaders running blogs. You too can run a blog. You can use this frequent communication method to keep the audience informed about your brand, which for many companies is kind of boring. I think Procter & Gamble is one of the best examples. Procter & Gamble, I've showed you their Facebook page in this social media chapter, and they do keep us updated, but boy, it's not very exciting. So maybe I would steer away. I mean, unless you did have absolutely hardcore fans about your company, I would maybe steer away from that strategy. And maybe use it more to build authority and trust. And I want to share with you one of my favorite websites, menwithpens.ca, which is this guy here. Hey, there we go. So, Men with Pens is a phenomenal web design and copywriting company. And when I say phenomenal, I really mean they are exceptional at what they do. Their designs are literally out of this world. It's great. But here we are on the homepage, all freshly loaded up. Today's featured article. Hey, what? A design company, but it's got a bunch of articles on it. That's interesting. Okay, so let's just look at their offering real quick, and then we're gonna talk about what this blog is here. So, web design, copywriting, their portfolio, their blog, their about, and their contact. Okay, so let's click on web design real quick. No, not gonna take me to a new page. Thank you. Copywriting. These guys are expensive. It's not a cheap company. Not by any stretch at all. If you were to work with Men with Pens, you would end up paying a good amount. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Facts, right? Okay. So what do they write about? How to write a free ebook in just 7 days. The best and worst places to write. How to smash writer's block forever. Oh, a lot about writing, copywriting, one of their services. Why you should invite your customers to a campfire storytelling session. The cold hard truths about guest posts. How to cast a spell on your next blog post. Do you really care about good writing advice? Why you should embrace icky sales and marketing. Ditch your blogging schedule. What to do when you hate your blog. Okay, a lot of this is about writing. A lot. Occasionally they do have business posts, but the vast majority on the site, it is all about writing, which makes sense. They are, after all, Men with Pens, and they are, after all, copywriting, a copywriting company, as well as design. So what's going on here? Well, they're a premium company. They write authoritative articles on what they do, but they never actually give away. Like, if you think about it, they don't really give away too much about their service. Like, they do offer copywriting services where you can probably get them to write an ebook and certainly your website and sales page. But they don't really give super technical copywriting advice. Sure, their articles are interesting. They're certainly engaging to people who enjoy writing, and their blog has won awards because of this. But none of it is super advanced technical stuff. It's all just in the field. So they're not really cannibalizing their sales by doing this, but they are setting themselves up for authority and trust. These people know their stuff. How interesting. And this is exactly how, when we look at blogging for brand control, this is exactly what you want to be doing. They're a service-based company, and they have this blog, and it builds their brand. How phenomenal is that? 2 slides to go. Word of mouth. Oh, it is the most powerful and awesomest part of the marketing mix. In all of the tools in the marketer's toolkit, this is the best one you can use, which sucks because it's the one that we have the least control over. And with that said, you do have a fair degree of control over over whether people talk about you or not. Let me share a story with you about LASIK MD. LASIK MD is, here in Canada, a major provider of laser eye surgery. And a few years ago, I had my eyes done at this clinic. And I have to say, it's a pretty awesome experience overall. LASIK looks after everything from the beginning to the end. So from the initial consultation with optometrists all the way through to post-procedures and post-procedure checkups annual visits and just making sure that you're good. They really put the time in. And when you think about that, the price you end up paying, while a little bit hefty, it actually, for the amount of care and service they deliver, it's pretty good value. I really enjoyed my time here, and when I got my eyes done was in my third year of undergrad, and it's interesting. I remember actually, despite being in university, having to do the classes and all that, I actually looked forward to going to this clinic because everyone there was so friendly and so nice and so helpful, and just it was just a phenomenally well-run company. So you can imagine that this past week, when one of my friends asked if anyone had gotten their eyes done and where would they recommend going and what kind of procedure they would recommend, because she was in fact looking at getting this done as well. Well, I was happy to step up and say, yeah, go to LASIK. Phenomenal company. Absolutely enjoyed my time with them. Highly, highly recommended. That's word of mouth. And what I find so interesting about word of mouth is, even though I'm a marketer, and even though I deal with marketing strategy on a day-to-day basis, and like many marketers, I'm getting a little bit jaded about a lot of it when I see it in my real life. Like you start to see things once you've been in the field for a bit, how pricing is just targeted at a certain group, or how this product is literally just carved to fit, certain segment of the market. But even I still willingly and consciously spread word of mouth. And I think that's really a testament of how powerful it is. Now, your goal will certainly be to have as many people talking about you in a optimal way as possible. And really, if you can think to your own Facebook page or your own personal life, if you don't have a Facebook, it's really not so different from getting people to engage with you, getting your actual friends to engage with you. You want to be interesting and then give them something to talk about. And they'll fill in the blanks from there. Same thing with your company. Be interesting, give people something to talk about. It's not really that difficult. However, there are two more tricks. How to ensure it. 1, be remarkable. Hey, it's the theme of this course, or this chapter of the course. Just be remarkable. If you're fantastically bad, people are going to talk about you. If you're fantastically good, people are going to talk about you. There's actually this saying in music, which is very relevant. If you want to create a band and have that band be successful, all you need are 100 die-hard fans. That's it. Because once you hit that point of 100, they will start selling you to other people in a way that increases and is tangible. They will come to your shows. They will fly across the country to come to your shows. They'll buy your merchandise and help support you. That first 100. Well, think about it as a company, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're in startup mode. What would you do for 100 die-hard fans? It's interesting. And how much would that be worth to you? I mean, if you were, let's just say, a consulting company, small startup, you had few employees working for you. Wouldn't it be fantastic if across the internet you had 100 people who just loved you and your service, who spread the word about your company to other people, who sent you a lot of referrals frequently? That's the power of being remarkable. I think it's one of the most important and unfortunately overlooked strategies today. And that's not just for small companies who, keep in mind, historically, the whole selling feature of being a small company was for better service. I don't think so. I mean, when you look at major corporations, there's such an opportunity to be exceptional. People all across business schools right now, you have academics and professors analyzing and telling why Apple is successful and why they're so profitable. And I don't really think it's that complicated, really. Now, I haven't done a study on this, but as a marketing professional with a master's degree in the subject, I'm pretty confident in suggesting it has a lot to do with the fact that they're pretty remarkable in their product offering. I would suspect that's probably the vast majority of it. Certainly their pricing mechanism is right and all that other good, very important stuff, don't get me wrong, but it all kind of stems from just one central spot, doesn't it? Now, this won't be relevant for all companies, which is the second point here. Give them a way, give the people a way to talk about you. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And I think you have to be careful with this strategy. For instance, I would not want to put on my website a comment page where anyone could just come in and comment about your company. Well, then again, that's not the worst idea. If you were that consulting company and you provided absolutely amazing service, then having people come in and just write a comment and post it straight to your site like that, yeah, actually, that would really work. Now, thankfully, the internet has given people a way to talk about you, but you can also help this out a little bit and encourage conversation. I remember in the social media course, I mentioned bodybuilding.com and walked you through their Facebook page because I thought it was a killer example, and it is a killer example of how companies should run their social media. And I commented in that chapter that they were continuously engaging with their audience. But what we didn't focus on then was the sheer amount of word of mouth that happens because of that, because of people sharing those posts, because of people commenting, because of the social proof that gets derived. Basically, it's just about setting yourself up in a way that's advantageous to your firm. And that's all there is to it. And that's all there is to this PR, reputation management, and word of mouth portion of the course. I'll see you in the last chapter, content marketing.